Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave. Right now.
Eric Donaldson didn't ask. He told. His voice carried across the marble lobby of Provident National Bank with the practiced authority of a man who had spent 15 years deciding who deserved to sit in his chairs and who didn't. Margaret Lewis looked up from her folded hands. Her purse rested on her lap. A single envelope, creased once down the middle, sat tucked between her palms like something fragile. She had been sitting in that waiting area for 27 minutes. Quiet. Patient. Not bothering a single soul. "I'm waiting for a private banker," Margaret said. Her voice was soft, the kind of soft that came from decades of speaking gently to 7-year-olds learning to read. "I have a 10:30 appointment." Donaldson didn't even glance at the appointment screen. He didn't need to. He had already decided. "There's no appointment for you, ma'am. You've been loitering for nearly half an hour. This is a place of business. You'll need to leave the lobby." A young teller behind the second counter slowly lowered her phone below the partition, screen tilted up, recording. She didn't say a word. She wasn't sure yet what she was watching. She just knew her hands had started moving before her brain had finished processing why. "Sir," Margaret said, still quiet, still steady, "if you could just check the schedule under Lewis." M as in Mary. Lewis. Donaldson took one step closer. He didn't check the schedule. He raised his hand, palm up, in the universal gesture of a man done explaining himself, and then he made a small, sharp motion with 2 fingers toward the security desk near the front entrance. A man in a navy uniform pushed off the wall and began walking toward Margaret. Unhurried. Heavy-footed. Like this was a routine he had performed many times before. The lobby went still. A woman at the ATM stopped mid-transaction. A man in a gray overcoat near the deposit slips looked up, looked at Margaret, looked at Donaldson, and then, very deliberately, looked back down at the floor. 3 people near the customer service counter pulled out their phones almost in unison. Nobody helped. Nobody spoke. They just filmed. Margaret didn't stand up. She didn't argue. She simply folded her hands a little tighter around the envelope and waited to see what came next. What came next was Eric Donaldson making the single worst decision of his entire career. And every single person in that lobby, including the man who was about to lay hands on a 64-year-old grandmother, was about to learn exactly who Margaret Lewis was. To understand why what happened that morning would end with a branch closing, a CEO apologizing on camera, and a man who had spent 15 years telling people they didn't belong learning that he was the one who didn't, you have to understand who Margaret Lewis actually was. Not who Donaldson assumed. Who she actually was. Margaret grew up in East St. Louis. The kind of neighborhood where the streetlights flickered for a reason, where everyone's grandmother had buried at least one child before her time, and where the school had one set of encyclopedias for the entire 5th grade. Her mother cleaned houses. Her father worked the rail yards until his back gave out at 51 and never gave him another easy day. Margaret was the first person in her family to finish high school. The second to graduate college, after her older sister. She got her teaching certificate from Harris Stowe State University in 1983 and walked into her first classroom at Roosevelt Elementary that September, 22 years old, 4'11", and ready to fight the entire world for every child who walked through her door. She taught 3rd grade for 41 years. 41 years of small hands, of phonics charts and birthday cupcakes and lice notes and parent conferences held in the parking lot because the parents didn't have anywhere to leave the younger kids. She taught the children of children she had once taught. She bought school supplies out of her own paycheck. She drove students home through the snow when the buses didn't come. She wore the same gold cross necklace every single day, the one her mother had given her at her college graduation, and she never raised her voice in a classroom, not once, in 41 years. She retired in May. Quietly. With a sheet cake in the teacher's lounge and a card signed by 63 former students who had driven from 4 different states to come back for it. 3 months later, her only son, Marcus, was killed in an industrial accident at the chemical plant where he had worked since he was 19. He was 38 years old. He left behind a wife and 2 daughters, ages 9 and 6. The settlement came down 14 months after that. $8.4 million. Wrongful death. Documented negligence. Margaret had not asked for a single cent of it for herself. The check was made out in her name. Margaret Beatrice Lewis. $8,400,000. The lawyer had asked her if she wanted it wired. She had said no. She had said she wanted to carry it herself. She had said she needed to walk it into a bank with her own 2 hands, because if she didn't do it that way, she wasn't sure she would believe it was real. And she wasn't sure she would believe Marcus was really gone. The lawyer had not argued with her. He had simply put the check in a manila envelope, sealed it with a piece of clear tape, and slid it across the desk. He had told her to be careful. He had told her to call him if anything went wrong. Margaret had folded the envelope once down the middle. She had put it in her purse. She had driven home in her 2009 Buick LeSabre, the one Marcus had helped her pick out at the dealership the year he turned 26, and she had sat in her kitchen for 2 hours just holding the envelope in her lap and looking out the window at the bird feeder her granddaughters had made her last Christmas. Then she had called Provident National Bank. She had asked, in her quiet teacher's voice, if she could schedule an appointment with a private banker to make a large deposit. The woman on the phone had asked how large. Margaret had told her. There had been a small, sharp silence on the other end of the line. Then the woman had said, very warmly, very professionally, that of course she would set that up. Tuesday morning, 10:30, with their senior private banking specialist, Mr. Patel. A welcome packet would be prepared in advance. Refreshments would be available. Would Mrs. Lewis prefer coffee or tea? Tea, Margaret had said. With a little honey if they had it. The woman had assured her they would have honey. That was a Friday. The appointment was set for the following Tuesday, 10:30 in the morning, at the downtown St. Louis branch on Olive Street. Margaret had circled it on her kitchen calendar in blue pen. She had not told her daughter-in-law. She had not told her granddaughters. She had not told her sister or her pastor or the women at her Wednesday night Bible study. The settlement was not something she wanted to talk about, not yet, maybe not ever, because every dollar of it was a dollar that came from her son not being there anymore, and there was no way to make that math feel like good news. She had spent Saturday and Sunday in church. She had spent Monday cleaning her house from top to bottom, the way she always did when her mind was loud. On Tuesday morning, she had gotten up at 5:30, ironed her white blouse, put on her gray cardigan and her good gray slacks, fastened her gold cross at the back of her neck the way she had done every morning for 41 years, and driven herself downtown. She had parked in the public lot 2 blocks over because she didn't want to deal with the valet. She had walked the 2 blocks in low, sensible shoes. She had pushed through the heavy glass doors of Provident National Bank at 10:22 in the morning, 8 minutes early, just the way her mother had taught her. The lobby was beautiful. Marble floors. A coffered ceiling. A small fountain in the center that made a gentle, polite sound, like a bank that wanted you to know it had money but didn't want to be vulgar about it. The receptionist's desk was empty. A small sign said the receptionist would be back in 10 minutes. Margaret had looked around for someone to check in with. She had seen 2 tellers, both with customers. She had seen a young woman behind the customer service counter who appeared to be on a phone call. She had seen the row of leather chairs along the wall, the ones meant for people waiting for appointments, and she had done what any reasonable person would do. She had sat down. Quietly. Folded her hands over her purse. Waited. That was 27 minutes ago. Eric Donaldson had walked out of his glass-walled office at 10:41. He had paused at the top of the small step that separated the manager's area from the main lobby. He had scanned the room the way he scanned every room, with the casual, proprietary attention of a man who believed the marble belonged to him personally. His eyes had passed over the customers at the ATMs. Over the woman at the deposit slips. Over the man in the gray overcoat checking his phone. His eyes had stopped on Margaret. He had looked at her for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds was all it took. He didn't check the appointment screen. He didn't check with the receptionist desk. He didn't ask a single question of a single soul. He just looked at her, made a decision the way some men make decisions about other people's lives, and then he started walking. He stopped in front of her. He did not sit down in the chair next to hers. He did not crouch to her eye level. He stood, looking down, his hands clasped lightly in front of him, his bank logo tie centered perfectly under the knot of his Adam's apple. He was 43 years old, 6'1", brown hair parted on the left, the kind of man who looked exactly like the photograph on a bank's website. Local roots. Trusted advisor. Your neighbor in finance. Ma'am, he had said the first time, gently enough that it could almost be mistaken for kindness, are you waiting for someone? Margaret had looked up. She had given him the same patient half-smile she had given 38 years of parent-teacher conferences. Yes, sir. I have a 10:30 appointment with a Mr. Patel. Donaldson had smiled back. It was not a real smile. It was the smile a man wears when he has already decided you are lying and is interested only in catching you in it. Mr. Patel is one of our senior private bankers. Are you sure you have the right branch? I'm sure, Margaret had said. The young lady on the phone confirmed it last Friday. And what is the appointment regarding? Margaret had hesitated. Just for half a second. Because the answer was not something she wanted to say out loud in a lobby full of strangers. Because the answer was the worst day of her life turned into a dollar figure. Because the answer was Marcus. It's a personal matter, sir, she had said quietly. Mr. Patel is expecting me. That was when Donaldson's smile had gone away. He had not raised his voice yet. He had simply taken a small step back, glanced toward the receptionist desk that was still unattended, and said in the carefully controlled tone of a man who believes he has identified a problem, Mrs., I'm sorry, what was the name? Lewis. Margaret Lewis. He had not written it down. He had not gone to check it. He had simply nodded the way a man nods when he wants you to believe he is being thorough. Mrs. Lewis. If you'll just give me one moment, I'll see what I can find out. He had not gone to find anything out. He had walked back to his glass-walled office, picked up the phone, dialed an internal extension, and spoken for less than 30 seconds. Margaret had watched him through the glass. She had watched him hang up. She had watched him stand there for a moment, adjusting his cuffs, his jaw working slightly, and then she had watched him walk back out into the lobby with a different look on his face entirely. A harder look. The look of a man who had just confirmed for himself what he had already decided was true. That was the look he was wearing now, standing in front of her, telling her to leave. Sir, Margaret said one more time. Quiet. Steady. The voice she had used on the worst Mondays of her teaching career, the Mondays when a child came in already broken from whatever had happened over the weekend and she had to get the entire classroom calm without anyone noticing she was doing it. I would just ask you, very respectfully, to check the system one more time. Lewis. Lews. The appointment is at 10:30 with Mr. Patel. Donaldson didn't even pretend to consider it. Ma'am, I've already checked. There's no appointment under that name. You've been sitting in our lobby for over half an hour with no business here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. The young teller behind the second counter had her phone tilted up at chest height now, leaning her hip against the back wall like she was just on a break. Her name was Destiny Walker. She was 24 years old. She had been at Provident National Bank for 14 months. And she had watched Eric Donaldson do some version of this exact thing 4 times in those 14 months, every single time to a customer who looked a certain way, and she had said nothing about it because she had student loans and a 6-month-old daughter and a rent payment that came due on the first of every month whether she liked her boss or not. But she was recording now. She didn't know yet exactly why. She just knew that something about the way Donaldson was standing over that older woman, and something about the way that older woman was holding her purse with both hands the way her own grandmother used to hold her purse in church, had made Destiny's hands move before her brain had caught up. The red that was blinking on her screen. The audio was clean. The angle caught Donaldson's face in three-quarter profile and Margaret's face dead on. It would, in approximately 7 hours, become the most watched piece of video on American social media. The security guard reached Margaret's chair. He was about to make everything worse. His name was Reynaldo Cruz. He was 56 years old, a retired city bus driver who had taken the bank security job 4 years ago because his wife's chemotherapy wasn't going to pay for itself. He had a daughter Margaret's age. He had a granddaughter who was learning to read. He did not want to be doing what he was about to do. You could see it in his shoulders. You could see it in the way he stopped 2 feet from Margaret's chair instead of 1, the way his right hand stayed open at his side instead of moving toward her. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was lower than Donaldson's. Gentler. The voice of a man asking, not telling. "Mr. Donaldson has asked that I escort you out. Would you mind coming with me, please?" Margaret looked up at him. She looked at his face for a long moment. Long enough that Reynaldo had to look away first. Then she looked back at Donaldson. "Sir," she said, and her voice was still soft but it had something new underneath it now, the way her voice used to sound when a child told her a lie in the classroom and she was about to give them one last chance to tell the truth. "I am asking you, please. Look up the appointment. Lewis. 10:30. Mr. Patel. That is all I am asking. I have not raised my voice. I have not bothered anyone. I am sitting in a chair that is meant for sitting in. Please. Just look." Donaldson's jaw tightened. Something in him, some last small piece of professional instinct, almost did it. His eyes flicked toward the receptionist desk. Toward the appointment screen. For 1/2 second, the entire course of his life was balanced on whether or not he would take 3 steps and look at a computer. He didn't. He didn't because the woman in front of him did not look, to his eye, like a woman who had business with a senior private banker. She looked like a woman who had wandered in off the street. She looked like a woman who didn't belong in his lobby. And 15 years of running this branch the way he ran it had taught him that when his eye told him something, his eye was right, and the system would back him up later if anyone bothered to ask. So he looked at Reynaldo instead. And he said, in a voice loud enough to carry to every corner of the lobby, "Get her up. She's been told twice. I'm not going to ask a third time." For exactly 2 seconds, Reynaldo Cruz did not move. He stood with his hand still open at his side, and he looked at Margaret, and Margaret looked back at him, and something silent and very old passed between them. The understanding of 2 people who had both spent their lives doing what they were told for a paycheck. Then Reynaldo's hand came up. He laid it, very lightly, on Margaret's elbow. He did not grip. He just rested his palm there, the way you would touch your own mother's arm to help her up off a low couch. "Ma'am," he said again, and his voice cracked just slightly on the word. "Please." Margaret stood up. She stood up because she had spent 41 years teaching small children that you did not make a scene. You did not give people who wanted to be wrong about you any more rope than they had already gathered. You stood up. You walked. You held your head still and your hands quiet and you waited for the moment when the truth could be told without anyone getting hurt. That was what she had taught those children. That was what her mother had taught her. That was what her mother's mother had taught her mother. She stood up, and she kept her purse pressed against her side, and the envelope inside the purse pressed against her ribs, and she let Reynaldo guide her 3 steps toward the front entrance. That was when Donaldson made his second worst decision of the morning. He had been watching. He had been watching the way Reynaldo was holding her, gently, almost reverently, and something about it had made him angry. Some small mean thing inside him had decided that this was not the way a person being removed from a lobby ought to look. So he stepped forward, fast, and his own hand came down on Margaret's other arm, just above the elbow, and his grip was not gentle. It was the grip of a man who wanted to make a point. It was the grip of a man who wanted her to feel it. "Let's go," he said, loud now, performing for the lobby, for the cameras he did not know were rolling. "Out. Now." Margaret made a small sound. Not a cry. A breath. The breath of a woman who had not been touched without her permission since the year 1971. Destiny Walker zoomed in. The lobby saw it. Every single person in that lobby saw it. The man in the gray overcoat by the deposit slips. The woman at the ATM. The two customers in line at the teller windows. The young couple sitting 2 chairs down from where Margaret had been sitting, both of them in their late 20s, both of them with their phones in their hands. Every single one of them saw a bank manager put a hard grip on the upper arm of a 64-year-old woman who had not raised her voice, had not stood up, had not done anything except sit in a chair and ask, twice, for him to please check the appointment system. And not one of them said a word. The young couple looked at each other. The woman opened her mouth. Her husband shook his head, very slightly, the kind of head shake that meant don't, the kind of head shake that means we have things to do today and getting involved in this is not on the list. She closed her mouth. She looked back down at her phone. She did not, however, stop filming. None of them did. Reynaldo's grip on Margaret's other arm shifted. He had been holding her elbow. Now, very deliberately, he slid his hand down to her wrist and let his fingers go almost slack, so that he was barely touching her, so that anyone watching would understand that he was not the one doing this to her. It was the smallest act of defiance a man could make while still keeping his job, and he made it anyway, and Margaret felt it, and she did not look at him because she did not want to get him in trouble. They walked her to the door. 8 steps across the marble floor. Donaldson on her right, gripping. Reynaldo on her left, barely touching. The fountain still made its polite small sound in the middle of the lobby. The recessed lighting still made everyone look like they were in a magazine. The heavy glass door swung open. The St. Louis air hit Margaret's face. It was a cool October morning. 62 degrees. A thin gray sky. A bus rumbling past on Olive Street. Donaldson let go of her arm on the sidewalk. Not gently. He let go the way you let go of something you've been carrying that you don't want to be holding anymore. He took 1 step back, straightened his tie, smoothed the front of his suit jacket, and said, loud enough for the people on the sidewalk to hear, "If you come back inside, ma'am, we will call the police. Do you understand me? Do not come back inside." Then he turned around and walked back through the glass door, and the door swung shut behind him, and Reynaldo stood there for a half-second longer with his hands still half-raised in the air like he had wanted to say something and couldn't find the words. Then he turned too. Then he went back inside. And then Margaret Lewis was standing alone on the sidewalk in front of Provident National Bank, with her gold cross necklace and her gray cardigan and her purse pressed against her side, and inside the purse, an envelope, and inside the envelope, $8,400,000 made out in her name, and her son, Marcus, who was the reason for every dollar of it, still dead, still gone, still not coming back, no matter how much money the chemical plant had paid to make the lawsuit go away. She did not cry. She did not sit down. She did not call her daughter-in-law. She did not call the lawyer. She walked, very slowly, to the bus stop bench at the corner of Olive and 10th Street, and she sat down on it, and she put her purse on her lap, and she folded her hands over the purse, and she looked across the street at the brick face of a parking garage, and she did what she had done every single time in her life when something terrible had happened to her, which was to start praying, silently, in her head, the same prayer her mother had taught her when she was 4 years old. Inside the bank, Destiny Walker walked into the staff bathroom, locked the stall door behind her, opened her phone, and uploaded the video to her personal account. She did not add a caption. She did not tag anyone. She did not think about consequences. She was 24 years old, she had a 6-month-old daughter, and she had just watched her boss put his hand on a woman who looked like her own grandmother, and she did not have the words for what she was feeling, so she just posted the video and put her phone in her pocket and went back out to her teller window and rang the next customer up with a smile so professional that her hand stopped shaking before her shift ended. The video was up at 11:04 in the morning. By 11:12, it had 3,000 views. By 11:30, Amanda Thompson saw it. Amanda Thompson was 39 years old. Regional Vice President for the Mid-Missouri Division of Provident National Bank. 11 years with the company. The youngest woman ever promoted to her position, and the only woman of color at the regional VP level in the entire Midwestern footprint. She had grown up in Kansas City, the daughter of a postal worker and a public defender, and she had worked her way up the bank's ranks one quarterly review at a time, holding her tongue in more meetings than she could count, building a reputation for being the one person in any room you could trust to actually read the file before forming an opinion. That morning she was in the back of a rideshare on Highway 64 heading from her home in Clayton toward the regional office downtown. She had a 10:45 with the head of compliance. She had her laptop open on the seat beside her. She was halfway through a quarterly report and 3/4 of the way through a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was her assistant, Lena. The message was 4 words. "You need to see this." Below the message was a link. Amanda tapped it. The video opened. She watched, with the cold coffee in her left hand and the laptop forgotten on the seat beside her, 11 minutes of footage from a branch she oversaw. She watched a 64-year-old woman in a gray cardigan get told to leave a lobby. She watched the woman ask, twice, for someone to look up an appointment. She watched a security guard try to be gentle. She watched a man in a navy suit and a bank logo tie grip the woman's arm and walk her out the door. Amanda Thompson sat very still in the back of that rideshare for about 10 seconds after the video ended. Then she opened her laptop. She opened her email. She typed 3 letters into the search bar. LEW. The welcome packet was the second result. She had reviewed it on Friday. A new private banking client transitioning in for an appointment on Tuesday morning. Senior banker assignment to Devin Patel. Account opening deposit, expected, $8,400,000, settlement funds, wrongful death. The packet had included a 1-page summary the way every high net worth packet did. The summary had included the client's full name. Margaret Beatrice Lewis. The summary had not included a photograph. The summary had included a single sentence at the bottom that Amanda remembered word for word because she had stopped reading and stared at it for a full minute on Friday afternoon before continuing on with her other work. Client lost her only son in the incident giving rise to the settlement. Please ensure handling of this account is conducted with the appropriate sensitivity and discretion. Amanda closed the laptop. She did not close it gently. The sound was sharp enough that the driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Change of plans, she said. Her voice was very level. The same kind of level Margaret's voice had been in the video. Olive and 10th. Provident National. As fast as you can get me there. The driver was a young man named Hassan. He had been doing rideshare for 6 months. He had never had a passenger speak to him quite like that, but he had been raised by a mother who had also occasionally spoken to him like that, and he knew the tone, and he knew what to do when he heard it. He merged across 2 lanes of traffic and took the next exit. Amanda made 3 phone calls in the next 9 minutes. The first was to Devin Patel. He picked up on the second ring. Yes, he confirmed, he had a 10:30 appointment with a Mrs. Lewis. She had not shown up. He had been about to call to follow up. He had assumed she had hit traffic. He had been preparing the documents in his office for the past 40 minutes. Amanda asked him, very quietly, if he had spoken to Eric Donaldson that morning. Devin said no. Why? Amanda said she would explain when she got there. Stay in your office. Do not leave it. Do not speak to Donaldson. Do not speak to anyone. Pull up Mrs. Lewis's file and have everything ready. The second call was to the bank's general counsel, Marisol Reyes. The conversation took 90 seconds. Marisol said the words "I'm on it" before Amanda had finished her third sentence. The third call was to the CEO of Provident National Bank, a 61-year-old man named Walter Chen, who was at that moment in a board meeting in Chicago. Amanda did not get him. She got his executive assistant, a woman named Patrice, who had known Amanda for 9 years. "Patrice," Amanda said, "I need you to pull him out of that meeting. Right now. Tell him it's the kind of right now that ends careers." Patrice did not ask a single question. The rideshare pulled off the highway at 11:38. The bank was 4 minutes away. Amanda Thompson sat very still in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap exactly the way Margaret Lewis was, at that same moment, sitting on the bus stop bench 3 blocks ahead of her with her own hands folded in her own lap. Neither of them knew this. Amanda was thinking about the video. Margaret was thinking about her son. Margaret had been on the bench for almost 40 minutes. A woman had sat down next to her about 20 minutes in. An older black woman in a long brown coat and a knit hat, on her way to a doctor's appointment at the clinic 2 blocks down. She had not spoken at first. She had just sat down and put her shopping bag between her feet and breathed for a minute. Then, without looking at Margaret, she had said, "You all right, baby?" Margaret had nodded. She had not trusted her voice yet. The woman had not pressed. She had reached into the shopping bag and pulled out a packet of tissues and set them gently on the bench between them, and then she had taken out a small thermos and unscrewed the cap and poured something steaming into it and held it out. "It's just chamomile," she had said. "I make it sweet. You don't have to drink it. But it's here." Margaret had taken the cup. She had not drunk from it for a long time. She had just held it in both hands and let the warmth go into her fingers. When she finally took a sip, the woman had smiled, just barely, and looked out at the street and not said a single thing more. That was how Margaret Lewis was sitting when the rideshare turned onto Olive Street. Inside Provident National Bank, Eric Donaldson was back in his glass-walled office. He had taken his suit jacket off and hung it over the back of his chair. He had poured himself a cup of coffee from the small Keurig machine on his credenza. He was looking at his monitor, scrolling through quarterly numbers, and he was feeling, if he was being honest with himself, pretty good. He had handled a situation. He had identified a problem in the lobby and he had removed it before it became something larger. That was what branch managers did. That was what he was paid for. He had not, in the 40 minutes since Margaret had been escorted out, gone to the receptionist desk to check the appointment system. He had not looked up the name Lewis. He had not asked Devon Patel if he was expecting a 10:30. He had not done any of these things because he did not believe he needed to. Destiny Walker, behind her teller window, was watching the view counter on her video climb. 7,000. 11,000. 23,000. The comments were coming faster than she could read them. 2 local news accounts had reposted it. A St. Louis civil rights organization had shared it. A verified account with 300,000 followers, a journalist she did not know, had reposted it with the caption, "Who is this manager?" Destiny had not told anyone. Not her supervisor. Not Donaldson. Not the other tellers. She had simply rung up 4 more customers, smiled at each one, said "Have a nice day," and slid receipts across the counter. Her hands had stopped shaking somewhere around the 3rd customer. She did not know yet that her video would be on the local 6 o'clock news. She did not know yet that she would be interviewed by 3 different reporters before the week was out. She just knew that her shift ended at 4, and she had to pick up her daughter from her mother's apartment by 4:30, and she was going to get through her shift the same way she got through every shift, one transaction at a time. The ride-share pulled up to the curb across the street from Provident National Bank at 11:42. Amanda Thompson did not get out immediately. She had been scanning the sidewalk through the window as they pulled up. The video had shown the moment Donaldson had let go of Margaret's arm on the sidewalk and walked back inside. The video had not shown what happened next. Amanda did not know if Margaret had gone home. She did not know if Margaret had gotten into her car and driven away. She did not know if Margaret had walked down the block in tears. What Amanda saw, when she looked across the street, was an empty sidewalk in front of the bank's heavy glass doors. And what she saw, when she looked one block down at the bus stop on the corner, was a small gray cardigan figure sitting on a bench next to an older woman in a brown coat, holding a cup of something steaming in both hands. "Wait here," Amanda said to Hassan. She got out of the car. She did not walk toward the bank. She walked toward the bench. She crossed the street at the crosswalk. She did not run. She walked, with the careful measured pace of a woman who knew that running toward an older black woman who had just been manhandled by a stranger would not feel like rescue. It would feel like more. She stopped about 10 feet from the bench. Far enough that Margaret could see her coming. Close enough to speak without raising her voice. "Mrs. Lewis," she said. Margaret looked up. The woman in the brown coat looked up too. Her eyes moved from Amanda's face down to her shoes and back up. The full appraisal. A black woman in her late 30s in a tailored navy pantsuit, a leather work bag over her shoulder, an expression on her face that was not quite calm. Not threatening, but not relaxed either. The woman in the brown coat shifted her weight slightly closer to Margaret on the bench. Not protective, exactly. Aware. "My name is Amanda Thompson," Amanda said. She had not moved any closer. "I'm a regional vice president with Provident National Bank. Mrs. Lewis, I am here because I saw what happened to you this morning, and I would like, if you will allow me, to apologize for it, and to ask you to come back inside with me. Mr. Patel is still in his office. He has been waiting for you. Your appointment is still on the books." Margaret did not speak. She held the cup of chamomile tea in both hands and looked at Amanda for a long moment. The woman in the brown coat spoke instead. "She got grabbed," the woman said. Quietly. Not angrily, just informationally. "By somebody in a suit. In your bank. I've been sitting here listening." "Yes, ma'am," Amanda said. She turned slightly toward the woman in the brown coat and gave her a small nod, the kind that acknowledged a witness without performing for one. "I know. I saw the video. That is why I'm here." The woman in the brown coat nodded slowly. She turned back to Margaret. "Honey," she said, "it's your choice. You don't owe nobody nothing. But if you got business to do, you got business to do." Margaret looked down at the cup in her hands. She looked at the surface of the tea. She looked at her own reflection in it, fragmented by the small ripples her breathing made. "I have to make the deposit today," she said. Her voice was very small. It was the first time she had spoken in almost an hour. "Mr. Daniels, my lawyer, he said the check is good for 90 days but it's better to deposit it sooner rather than later. And I told myself I was going to do this today. I promised myself." "Yes, ma'am," Amanda said. "My son's name was Marcus," Margaret said. She was not looking at Amanda. She was still looking at her cup. "He would have been 39 in February. He left 2 little girls." "I know, ma'am," Amanda said. Her own voice had gone very soft. "I read your file on Friday. I'm so sorry for your loss." Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she handed the cup of tea back to the woman in the brown coat. She said thank you. She said God bless you. The woman in the brown coat said God bless you too, baby, and reached out and squeezed Margaret's hand once, hard, the way women of a certain age and a certain history squeeze each other's hands when there are no words for the thing that just happened. Margaret stood up. Amanda walked back across the street with her. Not in front of her. Not behind her. Beside her. They did not speak. Margaret held her purse against her side. Amanda matched her pace. They reached the heavy glass door of Provident National Bank at 11:51 in the morning. Amanda opened it for her. The lobby was, as lobbies go, doing the thing lobbies do. The fountain was still making its polite small sound. The recessed lighting still made everyone look like they were in a magazine. 2 new customers were at the teller windows. The young couple with the phones had left. The man in the gray overcoat had left. Rinaldo was back at his station by the front entrance. Rinaldo saw Margaret first. His face did a thing. It was a small thing, just a tightening around the eyes and a slight straightening of the spine, but Margaret saw it, and she gave him the smallest nod she had ever given anyone in her entire life, and Rinaldo's chin lifted just a fraction in return. The exchange took less than a second. Nobody else in the lobby saw it. The second person to see Margaret was Destiny Walker, from behind her teller window. Destiny's hand stopped moving on her keyboard. The third person was Devin Patel, who had been pacing in his office for the last 40 minutes and had stepped out into the lobby for the 4th time to check the front door. The fourth person was Eric Donaldson. He came out of his glass-walled office holding his coffee cup. He saw Amanda first. His face arranged itself into a smile of professional surprise. Then he saw Margaret. The smile did not so much disappear as evaporate. The coffee cup did not fall, but his grip on it shifted in a way that suggested it might. Amanda turned to him. "Mr. Donaldson," she said. "My office. Now." Donaldson did not move at first. He stood in the middle of the lobby with his coffee cup in his hand and his mouth slightly open, and you could watch his face go through the entire calculation in real time. Confusion first. Then dawning understanding. Then a kind of pale, sweating panic that he tried, badly, to smooth out into professional composure. "Amanda," he said. He tried for warmth. The word came out cracked at the edges. "I didn't know you were coming in this morning. Can my office? Now." Amanda did not repeat herself a third time. She turned to Devin Patel. "Devin. Please take Mrs. Lewis to your office. Make her comfortable. I will be in within 5 minutes." Devin stepped forward immediately. He was a soft-spoken man in his early 50s with kind eyes and a small silver pin on his lapel from his daughter's school. He approached Margaret the way you approach an injured bird. He did not touch her. He gestured very gently with one hand toward the carpeted hallway that led back to the private banking offices. "Mrs. Lewis," he said. "It is an honor to finally meet you. May I offer you a cup of tea? We have honey." Margaret looked at him for a long moment. Then she did the smallest thing. She smiled. Just barely. The corners of her mouth lifted maybe a quarter of an inch, and her eyes crinkled, and she said in her quiet teacher's voice, "I would like that very much, Mr. Patel." "Thank you." She walked down the hallway with him. She did not look back at Donaldson once. What happened in Amanda Thompson's borrowed office over the next 11 minutes is not something that needs much description. Eric Donaldson stood. Amanda sat. Marisol Reyes, the general counsel, joined by video call from her car. Donaldson tried, twice, to explain. He tried the word loitering. He tried the phrase exercise of professional judgment. He tried, at the end, the words I had no way of knowing. Amanda let him say all of it. She did not interrupt once. When he finally ran out of sentences, she opened her laptop, turned the screen toward him, and pressed play on the video. She let it play all the way through. Then she said, very quietly, "You had every way of knowing, Mr. Donaldson. The way was to look up her name in the appointment system. You chose not to. We are going to be talking, over the next several weeks, about why you chose not to. For now, you will surrender your keys, your badge, and your branch credentials to Mr. Cruz at the front entrance, and you will leave the premises by the back exit. You will not return to this branch. Mr. Reyes will be in touch with you regarding next steps." Do you understand? Donaldson opened his mouth. He closed it. He nodded. He walked out. Amanda did not watch him go. She closed her laptop. She took one long breath. She stood up. She walked down the hallway to Devon Patel's office. Margaret was sitting in a deep leather armchair with a porcelain cup of tea in her hands. Devon was sitting across from her, and they were talking, very softly, about Margaret's granddaughters. Margaret was telling him about the older one, Naomi, who was 9 and wanted to be a marine biologist. Devon was nodding the way a man nods when he has a daughter of his own and understands exactly what it means to listen to a grandmother talk about her grandchildren. They both looked up when Amanda came in. Amanda pulled up a third chair. She sat down. She did not sit at the desk. She sat in the small grouping of armchairs, on Margaret's level. "Mrs. Lewis," she said. "I have a few things I would like to say to you, if I may." "Go on, Ms. Thompson." "I have already terminated Mr. Donaldson's employment with this branch. The decision is permanent and is being processed now. Our general counsel will be reaching out to you and your attorney within the hour. Our CEO, Walter Chen, has asked if he could speak with you by video call this afternoon to offer his personal apology. He has cleared his entire schedule. You may say yes or no. You may say not today. You may say never. The choice is yours." Margaret considered this. She took a sip of her tea. "I will speak with him," she said. "I would like to hear what he has to say." The video call was set up in Devon's office at 1:15 in the afternoon. Walter Chen appeared on the screen from a conference room in Chicago. He did not have a prepared statement. He spoke for 9 minutes, and at one point his voice caught, and at another point he had to stop and pinch the bridge of his nose for a long moment before he could continue. He apologized. He named what had happened by name. He did not call it a misunderstanding. He called it what it was. Then he made an offer. A $50,000 promotional credit to her new private banking account. Concierge service for life. A formal letter of apology entered into the public record. Margaret listened to all of it. She set her teacup down on the small table beside her armchair. "Mr. Chen," she said. "I would like to ask you for something else instead." "My son's name was Marcus Joseph Lewis," Margaret said. Her voice was steady. The teacup did not rattle. "He graduated from Vashon High School in 2005. He was a good boy. He was not a great student, Mr. Chen, but he tried his best. He never had anyone teach him about money. He never had anyone show him how to read a paycheck stub or how to start a savings account or what a credit score was. He learned all of that the hard way, the way most of the boys he grew up with learned it. The hard way costs you years, Mr. Chen. It cost him years." She paused. She picked the teacup back up. She held it in both hands. "I do not want the $50,000 in promotional credit. I do not need it. What I would like instead, if your bank is truly sorry, is for you to permanently endow a financial literacy program at Vashon High School in my son's name. The Marcus Lewis Foundation for Financial Education. I would like it funded in a way that cannot be cut from a budget. I would like it to teach the children there what nobody taught my son. I would like it to be there in 50 years, when those children are grandparents themselves. That is what I would like." The video call was silent for a long moment. Walter Chen wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He did not try to hide that he was doing it. "Mrs. Lewis," he said. "Yes. The answer is yes. We will fund it at a level that ensures it cannot be cut. We will name it exactly as you said. We will have a draft of the endowment agreement to you and your attorney by the end of this week. I give you my word." Margaret nodded. She took another sip of her tea. "Thank you, Mr. Chen," she said. "Mr. Patel and I have a deposit to make now, if you'll excuse us." Devon Patel processed the deposit at 1:47 in the afternoon. $8,400,000. The check cleared without a single flag. Margaret signed the paperwork in her careful third-grade teacher handwriting. She declined the offer of a complimentary lunch. She drove herself home in her 2009 Buick LeSabre. She made herself a tuna fish sandwich and ate it at her kitchen table while looking out at the bird feeder her granddaughters had made her. She did not turn on the television. She did not check her phone. She washed her plate. She took a nap. While she slept, the rest of it happened. The branch on Olive Street was placed under formal restructuring review by Friday. By the end of the 60-day period, it was permanently closed. Provident National Bank announced that the location would be replaced by a new community banking center, smaller, staffed entirely with new personnel, with a public commitment to a no-questions-asked accessibility policy. Eric Donaldson's termination was made public the same day. His name appeared in 3 separate national news features about the incident. He did not work in banking again. Reynaldo Cruz was offered a promotion. Head of security training for the entire regional division. He took the job. His wife's chemotherapy was covered. Destiny Walker was offered a full college scholarship by an anonymous donor whose identity was not disclosed but whose initials, according to the scholarship paperwork, were M.L. She finished her finance degree in 3.5 years. She is now an assistant branch manager at a different bank in St. Louis. Her daughter is 5 years old. The Marcus Lewis Foundation for Financial Education launched at Vashon High School the following September. It has, since then, expanded to 4 additional schools in the St. Louis metropolitan area. It has served, to date, more than 1,900 students. The curriculum includes a module on banking rights, what a customer is legally entitled to, and what to do, step by step, if something happens to you in a lobby that should not be happening. Margaret wrote that module herself. The video Destiny had filmed remained, for a time, the most shared piece of footage on American social media that month. But within a week, it was joined by a second video. A clip of Walter Chen's apology. A clip of Margaret reading the foundation's mission statement at the school dedication. A clip of Naomi, 9 years old, in a yellow dress, cutting the ribbon with a pair of oversized scissors while her grandmother stood behind her with both hands on her shoulders. That second wave of video became the most shared good news of Provident National Bank's history, a transformation entirely engineered by a 64-year-old retired schoolteacher who had asked for a cup of tea with honey and an endowment in her son's name and nothing else. So here's what I want to leave you with. Not about the bank. Not about Donaldson, or Amanda, or even Margaret. About the lobby. About the moment a woman was being walked out the front door, and a room full of people watched it happen, and the only one whose hands moved was a young teller who was not sure yet why she was filming. What would you have done? If this story moved something in you, share it. The conversation it starts is the whole point. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.